Here we go. Looks like we got live stream. People are connecting in. Woody pulled some shenanigans behind the scenes for this morning's show. I guess everyone's making a little fun of my common euphemisms here. So I got a package this morning that said, "Do not open until 10 a.m. December 1st." And I opened it when I came. They said, "Oh, go put it on." And when I came back to the computer, there's this whole crew wearing Good Buddy shirts. So, well, hey everybody, welcome to office hours this morning. Hopefully,
it's your grandson, Carl.
Here comes some more folks. I see Tony plugging in. It's good to see Dennis.
Hey, everybody.
Gary. Hey everybody.
Hopefully, grandson, Carl.
Oh, we got the YouTube. Somebody's got that audio on, playing back.
Here comes some more folks.
That's me again.
See Tony.
Woody.
Yep, always.
Hey everybody, it's good to see Tony there.
DC's back on. We're going.
DC's back
live.
on.
Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining.
DC, hopefully you can hear us now. Okay, good. Well, I saw you. All right. So for everybody who's just joined in, Woody had a little fun moment this morning where he sent out a number of T-shirts to folks, and including me, with a note on it to not open until 10 a.m. this morning. So just as we were starting up here, he told me to go open my package and put it on, and when I came back, it's cute. So hey everybody, welcome to office hours. Woody, do you want to go through sort of the normal preliminaries in case we have any?
Yeah,
we
sure.
Might have a couple here who haven't been.
So we're streaming live on YouTube and on Zoom. If you ever want to join the Zoom call, just register in advance at hudsonhenry.com/office hours. You'll get a link sent in your email, and you can join us and participate. Type in the chat, share with the folks. If you don't want to do that and you just want to watch on YouTube or on simulcast, we record it and post it to YouTube later. So each week now bi-weekly, we come up with different topics. This week, we asked people to submit an image, kind of a holiday in their area, given the time and the place that we're at. And so we've got 25 images or so to go through today. Rick and Hudson have made notes and taken a look at everything, and we'll go through everything one by one. And if you have any questions during time, feel free to pop it in the chat. Always, you can send an email to hi@hudsonhenry.com and get a question answered that way. Otherwise, participate however you like. Thanks.
Well, it's good to see everybody. I think maybe we should just jump in and start looking at pictures. What do you think, Rick?
Yep, I think that's a good idea.
Well, hang on just 1 second with all the hullabaloo.
I know.
The howling.
Didn't set up the
hullabaloo. I probably should set up the gallery first. We got super distracted this morning, so.
Don't know why.
Yeah, right. All right, here we go. Grab that link.
Second.
Nope. Hey, Woody, would you shoot me a link to that?
Yeah.
Sorry, I must have just skipped over it. Sorry, guys. 1 second. I swear we're going to get there. There it is. Boom. All right. I'm going to share my screen here. We'll jump in. And what the heck? Oh, it went full screen. Hang on. There we go. Sorry, everybody, for the sausage making. Minimize that. All right. So we'll jump in. First image right up is my good buddy CJ. No pun intended here. A really nice fall color shot with the with the Aspen CJ. I like right where you put that little blast of color. You know, I might work the foreground just a little bit, but a nice fall moment here.
Yep.
And we got Rob. Great moment, owl in flight. I'd probably zap that little branch on the left, but really nice capture. It might back off the sharpening just a little bit or paint it out of this foreground branch too. It just looks a little crunchy in here. Rebecca submitted a couple. We usually limit it to one, but they're both really nice. This is from Portland's Japanese Gardens. And it's such a beautiful fall garden that just explodes in the fall. And then this one is a water droplet on a leaf that she photographed close up, and I just love it. I think that's a really just got such
really
a great
nice composition.
Really nice. Just leads your eye through the frame, and the water droplets in just the right spot, and so razor sharp. We've got a fun one here by Matt. And you know, it's you know that shot where the moon is low on the horizon and you've still got that last little vestige of daylight left. It's really blue hour here, and that's a tough exposure. It's even tough to do HDR. You know, it's tough to get all the detail on the moon unless there's actually daylight left on the landscape. That last bit of kind of sunlight. You'll get those full moons where the full moon's rising, say 20 minutes before sunset or half an hour before sunset. This one's great. There's still good detail on the moon. When it gets like this, you know, the moon is getting that kind of that warm light from the sun as it's passing through the atmosphere. The way we see it, it's really warm in comparison to the landscape after that last warm light leaves the landscape. And so I'll often take a brush in and just kind of paint a little cooling white balance and a little desaturation into the moon to make it a little grayer and blend in a little more. The only other thing I'd say about this is just compositionally, maybe, you know, staking it out with your app ahead of time. And if there's a way to just get moved a little bit where the moon was maybe off to this side to balance, you know, you've got the statue on the tower on the left, and maybe if the moon wasn't so dead center, it could, if you had it a little over to the right, it might work slightly better, but it's a cool shot.
Yeah, it's a nice pano.
Yep, nice pano. Beautiful fall color, Tom. I would personally back off the blue in the sky just a little bit. I think that the color punch with the trees is perfect.
Yeah. I'd crop up a little the foreground.
Yeah. Yeah, just a bit right in there. Al, this one you took the assignment on, the weird feeling that this holiday season has. You know, there's just isolated bits of people celebrating in smaller groups, right? Imagine you took this rather surreptitiously. And so, you know, it's a great little moment shot. You know, I might, you know, crop in a touch. I don't know. There's a lot of this foreground napkin in the frame, but it's a cool shot. Definitely hits the assignment right on the head.
The background of the building is just wild with the lights and everything. I mean, it almost looks HDR-ish, but and that guy in the background just sort of intent on talking, you know, to the person he's with is just it's wonderful.
Well, and I like the spray bottle, the handstand, and the toilet paper roll here, and the little wreath hanging by the door. It's pretty fantastic.
Yeah,
it's like a barbecue and COVID moment, you know, with red wine.
Yes.
Yeah, this is a great winter texture shot, Marvin. There's really wonderful lines running through this, and it just has that
subtle color. You know, it's almost abstract.
Yeah, I really like it. In this, you know, you think, you know, well, this would be an easy shot to take. It's not. It really is tough to walk into a scene this complex and textured and come up with something that doesn't have a whole bunch of distractions or leads your eye the wrong way. This is a really nice job. This one, Richard. What did Richard write about this, Rick?
It was it's like some old place that he had found, and he was thinking about the people who had lived there, and it's
And how many people we've lost this year.
yeah.
And that this place was special to someone once. It's a you know, it's great. It's got a lot of feeling. I wonder if you're editing on a little bit of a bright monitor, because on my screen I don't have hardly any shadow detail up in the top third of the frame. It's really dark. And you know, if you edit on a really bright monitor, well, you know, you probably are seeing detail in there, but then when it comes on a color managed monitor, it can appear a bit dark, or prints can appear a bit dark. So think about turning your monitor down a little bit. Tony, this one just jumped out at me. I mean, I know this airport so well, and this view of like scurrying off with my roller bag on that run from the parking to the terminal here in Portland. And this is a great composition, man.
Yeah, it's a really nice composition. That if you haven't been to the Portland airport, there's this just unbelievable sky bridge, and you know, just this glass structure on the roof that, you know, you just look at it and it takes your breath away. I've shot that roof probably a million times. But
well, you can see it reflected in the windows here.
Yeah, but this is just, the lines in this are great. The story here is wonderful. Yeah, it's really pretty cool.
The other really unique thing about it is that there's almost no one in the shot. You know? They're waiting for people, but the Portland airport never looks like this. It just never looks like this. It's packed. So it's fantastic hummingbird, Carl. That's just a lovely image of a hummingbird. I
love it.
Yeah, I do too.
That purple
really,
is just
really nice.
Just beautiful.
It's so sharp.
Yep.
Wide aperture, blurred background. Charlie, you know, this one is a beautiful landscape, but it also kind of fits the bill, you know, for the feelings this winter and this holiday season. I love this little front that's rolling in here and creates this crease. Charlie sent this to me in a text while I was at the coast and he was out shooting, and I told him I loved it. It's a beautiful pano.
Yeah.
You live in such a stunning part of the Oregon coast, man. It's great. Love it. And Darren. Yeah, and the holidays, you know, that it's kind of, I have a shot in here too, and you know, to me the holidays are still kind of all about the family and the kiddos, and especially in this phase of life while we have small ones, the holidays get so focused and centered on them. This is a really cute frame with the cat. What's the cat's name?
Vesper.
Oh, it's cute. Great shot. You know, this one, Dennis, really, really works well too. And we're going to get into some questions. Dennis was asking about low light photography in the questions as well. And I think he did a great job here. I just love working in this blue hour with the modern digital equipment, because, you know, in the days of film and in the days of the early DSLRs, you could work at this time of night, but it was so grainy. It was, you know, almost, it was just horrible pattern grain noise. Now we can get these nice clean images in the blue hour with the first stars coming out. And this is just fantastic and a great use. Everybody's, you know, a little bit lit by their devices here. Plus there's a street light clearly coming down from the left. The stars is great.
I don't know if, I'm assuming that's a child in the lower right. But you know, his face is just lit by whatever, you know, whether it's a phone or a tablet or something. And the other thing that's kind of cool is right above the moon, I'm guessing that if this was shot in the last 4 weeks, that's Mars. Mars was in conjunction with the moon for a while last month, and I kept trying to find a way to get it. I just couldn't. But this is a lovely story. This is a really lovely story. You know,
and it fits this winter season for sure. I love all the down leaves and just a few left on the trees. This is another great one, Catherine. This is really, really nice.
Yep.
talks about the moment.
And
Still get to keep in touch with what's important.
yep. And smart going with the black and white too. You know,
Yep.
it really sort of helps focus on the central point of the image.
Mhm.
So
Medrick, this is a interesting still life. I'm looking at, I think that's a panel light reflected in there and some lume cubes. It's really kind of fun, the reflections in there. I would like it to be backed out a little bit more. How about you, Rick?
yeah, I feel like it could use a little bit more frame.
Yeah.
It's a nice still life. It just needs a little bit more. It needs something to sort of set it where it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you want to eliminate reflections, trying a polarizer can, if
Yeah.
you want to get rid of the reflections of your apparatus, the camera and the lume cubes and the lighting. We got this leaf abstract by Rich, and it's sharp and it's interesting, but it doesn't. There's not an element to grab me. My eye just kind of runs all over it. And I think if I'm approaching this photographically, if I'm approaching this scene, this leaf right here catches my eye. I might set it in the midst of the sea of leaves and getting close and experiment with making it sharp, making it shallow, depth of field, making this leaf the star of the show. I feel like it needs some focal point. This frame.
Yeah. One of the things that I do when I shoot carpets of leaves is I just wander around with my eye plastered to the viewfinder and just try to sort of work, where's the composition in there, because you can find them, but they're difficult to find,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's funny, we've seen a bunch of shots of this old mill, Ron, from a number of different people, both in workshops that we teach. We always have people come with their 5 favorite images, and in the kind of meet and greet, get to know, we share some people's images, and you find you really get to know each other that way in the workshop setting. And this mill keeps popping up. It's a beautiful, beautiful place in Colorado. Perfect time of year. There's 2 things about this one. It feels like there's a little bit of a green color cast, like I'm seeing it in what should be more white in the foreground tree. And I don't know that the foreground tree it almost feels like it's a little too close to the edge and too close to the mill. I might shift right, and I would try a bunch of different compositions here. Obviously, beautiful day.
Yeah.
But it's a perfect time to be out there.
Yep.
This one, Ted, this one, the light is great being out there in that time of day. The rocks in the background are so interesting. Your eye goes right to these 2 balanced stones up on the ridge top. The problem for me is, just the foreground being out of focus. You got to work to get that, that aperture and focus distance that's going to get your foreground so that it's sharp. It just gets distracting when there's the blurred foreground vegetation.
Yeah, the processing feels a little heavy on this one.
Yeah, I would back off the saturation, particularly in the yellows, and maybe move those yellows towards orange just a little bit with the saturation tools. It feels just a little mustardy, which can happen sometimes. This one, William, definitely a sign of the times. So for me, it would work a little better if I had either the entire door or maybe just the top half of it. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think, Rick?
I'd like to see more, and almost from a lower perspective, almost to make the cone more of a focal point,
Part of it.
Sort of leading you into the door.
Right.
And sort of give that sense of, I don't know, aloneness.
Yeah. I think you can
as someone
back off.
who was at the DMV not 2 weeks ago getting my license renewed, it was a rather bizarre experience. It really was. There were 3 of us waiting in line for an appointment and outside in the cold, and then one person got to go inside, and then in the lobby area, and then you got to go into the area where the clerks were. It was a very bizarre experience. Compared to the old days when you go into a big old room filled with like 300 people and
grab a number.
The old bakery number. Yeah. No.
Yeah. I'll try not to lose my license till we get the vaccines widely distributed. This is an interesting edit of the Bilbao Museum here. This is we were working with this in our panoramic project that we did last month. There was one of the members in that project was in Spain, and we worked through a number of different panoramas, and he kept going back out and kind of reworking it, and we're working with the composition, and finally got us just a beautiful one. This one's really heavily edited. Rick, do you want to give a few
this
thoughts
one,
on
the
this
background's been removed. There's been a sort of weather filter applied to it. And it's funny when you talk about that panorama during the project, and the thing that we kept telling the photographer to do was get more of it. We want to see the building, and I think it feels cut off to me here. And I'd almost either go in really tight and focus on the lines and the textures and the curves, and at the expense of any background whatsoever, and sort of work that, or back out and get the entire building. The problem is then it probably wouldn't look right, because if anybody's ever seen a photo of the Bilbao Guggenheim, it's in the city. It's literally, there's buildings all over the place. So I mean, it's a good way to work. I keep working this scene, I think there's an abstract in here that's just with that little window down, a little triangle down there at the bottom. I think, you zoom in with a tight lens and just.
Yep. Agreed. I think there's a million abstracts in there.
Yeah.
This one, Hakan, we had to read and reread a couple times, because at first we're thinking, well, this is a weird moonscape, and then we read your description and we saw that it's the sun with sunspots, and then you were using a DSLR, and then my reaction was like, oh my God, he's gonna burn his eyeballs out. And then you realize, well, no, he's shooting it through the fog. And I looked at your exposure time, and it's one of those moments when you can just look at the sun, and you saw these sunspots and captured it, and that's just crazy weird. Cool. Interesting. Yeah.
Kind of like E.T. in front of the moon,
Yeah. I know, it looks like there's a fly that landed on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really interesting.
This is, I mean, the composition is nice. I love the tree in the lower left corner. I can't tell if it's just sort of a JPEG compression, or it's not quite as sharp as we'd like, but it's a nice balance to the frame. Especially with the light, the light in the fog on the right side of the frame, just sort of gives a nice balance.
Right. Cool stuff. This one, Jim, wild interpretation here. A lot of editing, a mirror effect going on, and you got this crazy Rorschach in color going here.
Yeah. It's great.
It looks a little. It is great. I don't know if does it feel like it's just, well, I don't know. We'd have to see a more a higher resolution copy of this. I think it feels like just a little over sharpened, but it might just be the JPEG compression, like we were talking about in Hakan's shot. But there's a crazy little face in here, like
a Lion King or something,
Yeah, it's crazy.
Ron says it looks like a turkey.
Wow, there's a whole bunch of things it looks like. You can stare at this for a long time.
This really is a Rorschach. Yeah.
Back in my high school days, I could have spent a couple of evenings with this.
All right.
Lee's got the holiday dog crew here. Everybody in a height line. It's pretty adorable. And Sherry was asking me, she bought the 14 to 24 2.8, which I say, congratulations. You just bought one of the finest ultra wides ever. And she was asking if I thought that the distortion and the Christmas ornaments on the edge were a problem, and she should maybe think about getting a different copy. But I mean, anytime you're shooting something at 14 millimeters, I think anybody who's done quite a bit of wide angle photography and looks at this and realizes that it's an uncorrected 14 millimeter JPEG out of the camera will be sort of shocked that the lines in this image up near the top are as straight as they are, and the doors as straight. This is an amazing rectilinear lens. Anytime you're shooting the world at 14 millimeters, you have that sort of map maker's problem where you're trying to fit a huge three-dimensional world into 2 dimensions, and so much of it that there has to be distortion on the edges. That's one of the reasons why I talk about when you shoot panoramas with an ultra wide angle, lots and lots, well, anytime you shoot panoramas, lots of overlap, but the least amount of distortion is here in this middle section of the frame. So by using a lot of overlap, shooting a panorama with an ultra wide, you can just use that sweet spot where there's hardly any distortion.
Yeah.
But this is, to me, it's just another example of how amazing this lens is, that it's, got as little distortion in the edges as it does.
Yeah.
Nice. And then finally, I'm showing off my kind of, this is a different holiday season. We had really intended to get a big group of family together, grandmas and people for Thanksgiving, and with the rising rates of infection and hospitalizations, we ditched it, and just my aunt, who lives with us, who's here in the picture with my kiddos, and my wife and I went to the beach, and even though it was cold, it was clear and nice and huge waves, and we just had fun at the beach. And the holiday spirit for me is all about family, and we connected via Zoom and just spent time together in a beautiful place. So, you just got to make adjustments and shift. But
there was one more, Hudson. There was one more, Hudson. Yeah, one that came in after at the wire.
Host disabled. Oh, you gotta give me the host back, Woody. Am I back? No. Woody's
while he's doing that, anybody out there who has a Z6 II or Z7 II, you didn't hear it from me, but supposedly Adobe is just put out the final candidate release for the next version of Lightroom, just a small update, and it will have an update for the raw files, for the Z6, Z7 II raw files. I would imagine it would be out in the next week and a half, 2 weeks at the latest, if not this week. So,
Woody, can you hear me? Oh, it won't.
Oh, well.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
So sorry. I thought, we had run through them, and mine was the last one, but I can't share my screen. Woody's got the host somehow, and I don't know exactly what's going on. So, and he's, oh well. All right. Well, let's take some questions. If Woody can get me the host back, we'll look at that last image. All right. He says,
hang on one. Yeah. All right. Let's see here.
Well, one thing I'll talk about fast. Rick's. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, go ahead. If you've got something you want to bring up.
Well, while Woody and I were having that little discussion, you talked about the Z6 II files. Z7 II is coming really soon. Adobe, they should have that out really, really soon. I hear a lot of people saying, "Oh, we'll get the Nikon software and look at the raw files through that, and then export some other kind of file, or." Get a hold of the DNG converter. I mean, if just give it a little time, play with the JPEGs for now. What I do is I shoot raw plus fine JPEG and put the settings to standard, and you'll find that the most of the JPEGs are just beautiful, and just open them in a file window and sort so that you have the raws at the bottom and the JPEGs at the top, and copy the JPEGs in and you use them. And once that update's here, then import all those raw files. You'll probably wind up junking a bunch of them because the JPEGs are just fine. And if there's a few that are really important to you, you'll work on them. So, all right. Oh, and I think I have hosting back. Let's look at that last image really quick. I don't want to shortchange anyone. Oh, that's beautiful. Really nice, Ron. I like the, it could be just a little sharper in this front edge, the ice crystals, but it's a really nice composition, and that shallow depth of field is nice. Got that wintry feel. Yeah. Is there any more?
Color
is that
great.
it?
That is it.
The color's great. Yeah, I'm glad we didn't shortchange anybody in all of this. I see you there, Ron. So okay.
One question we can sort of talk about from some of the things we saw was Dennis asked, rules of thumb for trading off ISO, shutter speed, and aperture when working in low light. And we've been talking a lot about low light lately.
So I mean, or if we're talking about handheld shooting, say, low lit situation with people, it's all about how fast are those people moving to me. You know, if I'm photographing, there's been a few times in my life where I've been asked to professionally shoot an event. And I get into a situation in a low lit room with people, I'm going to run auto ISO in manual mode, and I'm going to choose a shutter speed of about a 30th of a second or to 60th of a second. I'm going to kind of fluctuate around depending on how fast people are moving. And I'm going to keep my shutter and my aperture wide open to just get as much light as I can and keep that ISO as low as I can. You know, if there's motion going on, clearly shutter speed becomes a limiting factor for you. And that's why I love how these new modern cameras have such great ability to work in low light with higher ISO and clean images. You know, if I'm working in a low light situation with moving subjects, I'm absolutely going to reach for my Z6 instead of my Z7, because the higher the megapixel count on that same size of sensor, the more noise you're going to get as you turn up the gain, and it starts to become a problem with your images much earlier. I set my max ISO in my Z7 to 6400, and I set it to 20,000 with my Z6. So that gives me a couple of stops to work with extra. And when it comes to working on the tripod, I mean, again, it's about motion. If you're trying to shoot a waterfall and there's a little bit of wind and the leaves are moving, you're going to have to be a little careful with how slow you set your shutter speed. If the clouds are moving and you don't want them blurred in a low lit blue hour type session, you're gonna have to worry about shutter speed. But you know, the great thing with low light photography in the landscape on a tripod is that often you can just kind of do as long a shutter speed as you want and keep that ISO really, really low. For me, as low an ISO as I can get is what I'm after.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things,
just print better.
One of the things that you want to learn is how your camera handles noise. You know, you want to be practicing, you want to shoot at different ISO levels to see at what point does the image break down for you. You know, what are you willing to do? What are you going to do with it? You know, it all gets back to that knowing your gear, you know. So
before I had my kids, every time I got a new camera body, I would chase my cats around the house in the evening in incandescent light in the house and shadows and lit sections. And I know David is doing that with his new Z6 II right now. Haven't you? Yep. He's been sending me photos from it. So
yeah,
I have direct evidence and asking me questions about this and that. You know, I think that you learn a lot running auto ISO and not even setting a max limit on it, and just see what happens at different, and then go through those images in the raw files and see, you know, how high an ISO can I be happy with an image for sharing digitally? How high an ISO can I be happy with an image that I could correct to the point where I could print it at what size? You know, that's something you just learn about your equipment. Just like what apertures are sharpest in the lens. Knowing your gear is more important than buying new gear by a landslide. So,
okay. Bill has a question, a very interesting question. Is 24 megapixel sufficient resolution for camera sets these days? Provided you don't, one, need to crop excessively, and two, aren't in the business of making massive commercial size prints.
I have a whole bunch of prints in my house from my D700, single frames from my D700 printed at 24 by 36. And I would say that's stretching that 12 megapixel file, but they look great, especially at viewing distance. Nobody looks at that and says, wow, you know, you could have used some more megapixels. And 24 by 36 is a pretty big print. You know, when it comes to my 36 megapixel prints, I mean, 48 by 60, no problem. You know, I think that 24 megapixels in my mind is the sweet spot. The camera I've been carrying nonstop with me is the Z6 II. I feel liberated because, to be honest with you, I'm looking at you guys right now, and it's my old Z6, and it's been my video camera since the day I got it. It's by far the best thing for shooting video. It was a revolution from DSLRs from shooting video. It just does a beautiful job. And for me to get it out and use it, I have to take it out of the cage that I have it in and disconnect all the HDMI cables and the monitor and all the, so it's kind of mounted on my big fluid head in my studio, and I pull it out to shoot video with mostly, and I've mostly been shooting with my Z7. Getting the Z6 II, I'm running around with it in my hand, and the only time I'm going to grab the Z7 is for some kind of a beautiful landscape shot that I might want to print huge, or I'm stationary on the tripod at base ISO. You know, those kind of magnificent shots that I want, you know, as high a quality as I can possibly get. But for running around and shooting handheld and capturing the world as I see it, and I'd be happy to print, you know, 24 by 36, no problem with this 24 megapixel sensor. I think 24 megapixels is kind of the sweet spot. What are your thoughts, Rick?
Oh, I wish,
and
I wish Sony had a better 24 megapixel camera right now. The A7 III is just not the camera that I want. But you know, the other thing about a 24 megapixel sensor is if you start thinking about panoramas with certain lenses, you know, and not even wide panoramas, just like a 2-image panorama, you know, you can get amazing prints out, and you get more resolution with it too.
I've had a lot of people asking me, do I get the Z6 II or the Z7 II? A lot of people are thinking about moving from their DSLRs now in the Nikon side of the house. And my common answer is, you know, the Z6 II, because if you need that beautiful landscape, exactly what Rick just said, pull out your panorama skills and just make it more megapixels. You can easily make 100 megapixel panorama with a 24 megapixel sensor. Yeah. And I know David Archer, who's sitting here with the guitars in his background, your camera that you've used more than anything probably is your D5, and that's 20 megapixels, right? Yeah. It's a great camera. And the beauty of that is it's got amazing low light ability. You know, it's the same reason why the Sony A7Ss remain down in the 12. Are they still 12 megapixels, or are they boosted?
Yes. Yep. Nope. It's still 12.
They want low light ability, and the smaller those, or the larger the photoreceptors on that full frame sensor, you know, the less of them they try to pack in to get more megapixels, the better the high ISO performance when you turn up the gain on that sensor. You're amplifying that sensor's signal, and it just gets noisy when you try to squeeze too many megapixels in.
Yeah. I mean, the one downside of a 24 megapixel frame is if you want to print big and you're cropping anything more than just a little bit off the edges. But I'd argue that makes it all the more important for you to be thinking about how you're composing when you're looking through the viewfinder. You know, I mean, it's
like the old days.
You get, you know, and
oh, you know,
if you're an on-one user or you're a Photoshop user, you can actually upsize a 24 megapixel file pretty easily and pretty well.
And I used to shoot for Getty with my 12 megapixel camera when Sony had the 5D out, and there was the 24 megapixels, or not Sony, I mean Canon. And Getty upped their submission requirements to like 20 megapixels or something, and my base megapixel was 12. So I was having to use what became on-one resize back in the day with genuine fractals as a plugin to Photoshop to up-res uncropped images to meet the submission requirements for the stock agency I was working with. So I mean, times have changed so much.
Jim asks if you got any words of wisdom about using extenders with zooms and primes.
It's funny. I've been kind of working a little bit with Charlie. Charlie got both the 1.4 teleconverter for the Z system and the 2.0, and he's been doing some tests for me and sending me shots. And it all depends on the quality of the lens that you're trying to put the extender behind. I have a 400 millimeter 3.5 old manual focus Nikon that just was legendary for its sharpness back in the early 90s. It was sort of the wildlife lens in the days before autofocus was so important. And I can put a 2x teleconverter on that 400 and make it an 800 7.1, and it's beautiful. It's razor sharp. It's just as sharp as if I was shooting it without the 2x teleconverter. I've never been able to put a 2x teleconverter on a 70-200 lens in my days, where it doesn't really reduce sharpness significantly. I was a little bit blown away that the new 70-200 for the Z system seems to handle their 2x teleconverter really well. There's something to be said for the quality of the teleconverter, but also it's only going to amplify faults in that lens. And with our high megapixel cameras that we're working with, I mean, 24 megapixels is kind of our base mostly these days. And glass, it really depends on what lens you're putting it behind. The more money you spend on that lens, the better it's going to do with the teleconverter. And I would argue that in most cases, the 2.0 teleconverters are generally built for the big, expensive primes, the big, fast primes, the ones that cost, you know, in the $7,000 and up range, work well with the 2x teleconverters. You can get the 400 2.8 Nikkor lens for $12,000 and put a 2x on it, and it becomes an 800 that's razor sharp, but you're paying a lot of money for that. If you try to put it, you know, on a lesser lens, it's going to expose all the weaknesses of that lens. So you have to experiment. I think you're relatively safe with most good modern glass with a 1.4, some of them with the 1.7, very few of them with the 2.0.
I'm not sure whether Jim was actually talking about a teleconverter or extension tubes. Have you had any? Oh, you got any sort of background? I can't recall ever seeing you work with an extension tube, but
I have them. I have some Keiko extension tubes, and I have used them for macro work. They're awesome. You know, you stick an extension tube between your camera and say your 70-200, and all of a sudden your 70-200 becomes a close focusing, shallow, even shallower depth of field macro style lens. And it can extend your kit with almost no weight and not very much money. You can turn your regular lenses into macro lenses. They're awesome. I love them.
And it's the same thing. The better the lens, the better it's going to work. But you know, it does give you that sort of close focus.
Mm-hmm.
Well, staying on the lens topic, hang on.
While Rick goes looking.
I just wiped the spreadsheet. David says, I often shoot towards the sun or bright lights. I like sun flares, but sometimes I get less desirable types of flare. Would a lens filter help reduce most forms of undesirable flare? If so, do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, you know, I mean, that's again another lens property. Some of them have multi-coatings and special elements that reduce that amount of flare. Others handle flare really poorly. To me, I don't think you're going to get a filter that's going to help. You can sometimes put a hood on, and as long as you keep the sun out of your frame and that hood shades your glass, that's going to help. And that's what the hoods in front of lenses are generally for. It's always funny to see people with their hoods on an overcast day where it's not raining. Hoods can help you keep rain off your element, and they can help you keep the sun out of the, you know, from creating a reflection from out of the frame that causes flare and ghosting. Some lenses are just better than others. That's just a fact. And it seems like most of the modern lenses that are being designed now are better than our previous generation of lenses. So.
All right. Tom asked, and he's asking specifically about On One, but I think this is just an interesting question to ask regardless. He says, I use On One to edit.
Mm-hmm.
For the best print, how should I save it?
Well, you know, I mean, I like to, these days, I just print raw files in general. You know, maybe I've done some work on another piece of software and I've got a PSD. I keep them full resolution. And if I'm printing myself, I print right from the highest resolution 16-bit wide color gamut file that I have, my editing master. That's either going to be a raw file or a Photoshop document in my case, whether it's an On1, Lightroom. But if I'm sending it off to a lab, I'm going to read what they want. You know, I send things off to Bay Photo all the time, and if you read their fine print about what they would like, they'd like you to convert that file to Adobe RGB and make it a 100% full resolution JPEG. And they do a beautiful job with those. Go ahead, Rick.
I think too, part of this too is, we've talked about this in the past, when we're talking about creating a print, at least our own prints, we create versions and we'll often edit those versions to the print.
Yes.
You know, you have a labeling system for prints.
I do.
I use keywords, you know, that's final print, so that I can get back to find this image or that image. Because sometimes you do end up doing some things with either sharpening or some color balancing or things like that, that are separate from the sort of basic raw processing.
Right. In my technique is to take my master file and create a version in On One or a virtual copy in Lightroom, color code that purple, soft proof it using the calibration profile for my printer and my paper, and get it looking just like I want on my color managed, correctly bright, you know, brightness profiled monitor, and then print from that proof copy. And if I see a purple image in my collection, I know it's a proof copy. I know it's a print. So
yeah. Steve asks, on the Z6 II, have you seen any issues with shutter lag when working with action shots?
no, it's significantly better. It feels much more DSLR like to me with the fast frame rate, and it's got a significantly reduced shutter lag. I don't know how David's used to the D5, so he may feel like it's got more shutter lag than I do, but you know, going from the Z6 to the Z6 II or the Z7 to the Z6 II, there's several things that I noticed with the dual processors, and it's improved autofocus tracking, and it's much faster moving around when you're say moving the focus point around on the screen, and there's almost no shutter lag. I have a lot easier time tracking action. It's just great. And you know, it was something I always complained of with mirrorless cameras before the Z's. I felt like the Z's got to the point where it was usable for me in action situations, but the new one's better. And the other thing is you can run through images. Everything works faster. The dual processors really speed things up.
Okay, I've got one last question on the Z's. On the eye autofocus, once it locks, do you continually have to hold back button focus?
Yes.
It's from Ted. He's getting ready to make the move from a D500.
So, I mean, I am a huge advocate of back button focus. If you're shooting video, there's an AFF mode where it will just keep tracking the eye and it'll keep it in focus. You know, when I'm using that right now, it's got my eye locked, my Z6, and it's just tracking me. I could walk around the room and it would keep me locked in. When you're shooting stills and you're in AFC, autofocus continuous, and you're a back button focuser, you know, the beauty of back button focus is if you take your thumb off, it's locked on that last thing that you focused on. So you can recompose, do whatever. If your distance between you and the subject doesn't change, you're locked on focus. You don't have to worry about it. So if you're tracking an eye, yeah, you have to keep your thumb down on that button. It's just becomes second nature though. The other thing that's really cool, and I'll just put this out fast, it's going to be in my Thursday video, but I can't remember who it was emailed me about this feature that I hadn't even noticed yet. And something they did with the Z6 II and the Z7 II that's quite amazing is they've had this focus memory. It's in the settings menu. It's like remember focus, and you leave that turned on. It's on by default. You can shut the camera off after you've finally focused on some close detail, say at a really wide aperture, and it's perfectly in focus, or you focus on infinity like the stars at night. You can turn off the camera and spin one of these new mirrorless lenses, focus by wire, focus ring. You can take the lens off, put it back on, turn the camera back on, and you're focused exactly where you were when you turned it off. And that is super cool.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's super cool. That's so helpful for night shooting. I
was going to say that would make our jobs when we're shooting the Milky Way just so much easier. Yeah.
So much easier. Yeah. And you can save battery by not turning it off in fear of losing focus. It's great. So
our good friend Jason Ward is struggling with the next lens purchase, the 20mm Z 1.8 prime or the 14 to 24. Help, Jason, please.
I mean, it depends on how much versatility you need. You know, I'm a wide angle junkie. It also depends on how much do you love having a really wide angle. Because when you think about that 6mm difference between 20 and 14 is a huge percentage
Huge.
difference. Huge. I mean, you're talking about 6 out of 20. You're talking a 30% wider lens. It's a third wider. So, I mean, for me, if you've got the funds, I would definitely go 14 to 24. The 20 is a wonderful star lens. It does fantastic rendering, point source backlit subjects. It has almost no ghosting, no flare, no coma, but neither does the 14 to 24. It's not quite as fast, but it's way more versatile, and it's not that much bigger. If you can afford it, the 14 to 24 is just a monster lens. It's wonderful.
What if you've already got that F-mount 20?
The F-mount 20 is F-mount 20 throws a beautiful sun star, and it's good. It stopped all the way down. The Z20 beats it in every other respect, kind of all around town. I mean, it's just way sharper everywhere. And the 20 F-mount lens has horrible coma. It's like almost unusable for stars unless you stop down to like F4 or F5.6, which makes it not a good star lens. So.
Hey, I don't have to see any questions out of anybody in the Zoom chat has a quick question. Toss it our way.
One that jumped in over on YouTube around tripod plates and FTZ adapters, and sometimes the tripod plate makes it difficult to get the FTZ off. I know you've got a couple things that you really like, Hudson. So what is it you're working on for that?
There are times with the FTZ adapter on it's just, you do have to pull the camera off the tripod to take the FTZ adapter off or put the FTZ adapter on. I haven't found a workaround for that, sadly. I mean, unless you want to put like an extra dovetailed clamp that's, you could clamp another clamp on top of your clamp to get more height. It just, the way the FTZ adapter sticks out, when you try to rotate it out of the mount, it throws a pretty big chunk down into the area where your tripod head is going to be, or your clamp is going to be. And so, yeah, luckily, I don't find myself in too many situations where I need to constantly be putting the FTZ on and off. But I do have a couple lenses that I love to use, like my 105 1.4, and it kind of lives with the FTZ adapter on it, and it doesn't have a rotating collar. So yeah, I just take the camera off the tripod, put it in, and put the camera back on. I haven't found a way around that. It's a bummer.
Carl says that Kirk makes a nice L adapter specifically for the FTZ.
They do. And I have one, but I find myself, I don't know. If I had a big heavy lens, I was worried about damaging the camera by hanging the lens from the camera, but all those for me have rotating collars on them.
Yeah. You got, you want to say anything about your new toy?
I could. I got a new drone about 10 days ago, and it's funny because I actually ordered it in January, and it's by an American drone company called Skydio. Has anybody heard of them? Yeah, it's funny.
Someone has. Dennis, our good friend Dennis Baum.
Well, Dennis and I were talking about it on the Pano Project group chat, but it's an amazing piece of technology. It's kind of like a little flying director of photography that's autonomous and won't hit anything. And you can have it circle you or track you or stay right behind you and turn with you or keep the same background in focus and stay on you. And it has a GPS beacon that you carry. It's a really amazing little toy. Hold on. I'm going to just pull up.
I will say it's not foolproof. It did fly into some branches and recovered well. And recovered.
It recovered it. Yeah, I didn't even notice it had done it until I was watching the video of it. Hold on just one second. I'm just going to pull something up, and I'll show you a cute little bit of my my kiddos at the beach this weekend with it. I was just testing it out, and it is pretty darn cool. And you know, I'm also impressed that they were able to hold on, I'm going to pause this. They were able to dial in their logistics just amazingly, because they told me back in January that it would be available around Thanksgiving time. And lo and behold, I mean,
That was before the pandemic.
Yeah, before the pandemic, they told me it was going to be available around Thanksgiving time. Is everybody seeing this right now?
Mhm.
And it literally a week before Thanksgiving, they said, your order's ready. You know, you can, I put $100 down in January, and I gave them the rest of the money, and it arrived, you know, 4 days after they emailed me. So here it is. And this is like my second time flying it, I think.
Technically, you're
I
not
just
flying
threw
it,
some-
right? It's just flying
Well,
for you.
I have that little beacon in my hand, and you can
Right.
kind of point, click, and move it around, set its elevation, and I'll turn this down. The kids love it, obviously. You can set it to orbit people. You can set it to keep the background stationary, like I have right here. You can set it to stay in front of someone or behind someone, or to which side you want. It's pretty darn, you can skip ahead a little bit. You guys don't have to watch this whole thing. There's a funny moment where my little girl splashes down in the water right here. Right here. But I think that the stuff going through the woods is just really impressive. Like I've gotten to the point where I'm pretty darn confident it's just not going to hit anything. I've got it set to just follow us here. You know, and I spliced a few little bits together. That's its case hanging on my back. It's really thin. It actually fits in my f-stop bag between the ICU and the panel of the pack. So it's and you can hand launch and land it really easily. It's designed to easily hand launch and land. So I'm highly impressed with it. Its batteries clip in magnetically. It takes almost no time to start up and calibrate and fly. It's pretty dead simple. You can fly it with a controller, you can fly it with your phone, or you can fly it with that beacon, which is pretty cool. So you can just take the beacon and say, I want it over here at that elevation, and set it in the mode where it follows you there, or it keeps geostationary where that background mountains and the angle of light stay the same, and it just tracks you at that angle. It's pretty amazing.
What's the name of the drone again?
Skydio, Skydio. You have to buy them direct from them. Skydio 2. If you go to skydio.com. And it's, you know, for the whole kit and caboodle, like I got 3 batteries and a double charger and 128 gigabyte fast micro SD card and the drone. It was like $1,500.
Okay.
And the waiting list is long. You have to put $100 down now, and I'm not sure where they're at this point.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I saw someone else remarking that they were months away from getting theirs. So,
like I said, I put my down payment down in January, and I just got it. So hopefully it's not quite as long as that, but I was impressed. So there's a YouTuber on that I follow who's an amazing mountain biker, and he does a mountain bike video every week all over the world. That's his job. He mountain bikes everywhere, and he got one. And he, you know, everybody was asking, how are you getting this footage of yourself? And and he did a little video on it back in January, and I immediately ordered it. I was like, that looks amazing. And sure enough, it is. So it's cool.
Well, real quick, I wanted to say, are we doing one on the 15th?
Yeah.
Plan on that?
Yep.
Okay. So it'll probably be the last office hours of the year on the 15th, everyone, 10 a.m. Pacific. Go to hudsonhenry.com/office hours to register. It's not open right now, but it'll be open soon.
Yep.
Okay. Just be a general Q&A session.
Probably.
Yep.
Unless we come up with something in the next, hour or two.
Okay.
I think it's a general Q&A session.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we'll have stuff to talk about as always. It's good to see everybody. And Woody, thanks so much for the surprise this morning. I think it threw us a little off at our start, but you were all, everybody here are my good buddies, and that really cracked me up this morning. So it was great. All right, everybody. So stay safe out there. Have fun. Enjoy the holidays as best we all can. We'll be out there photographing together again soon. We just got to make it through this little period here.
Yep.
All right, guys.
All right, take care.
Thanks
All right, everybody.
so much.
Take care.
Bye, guys.